that over 400 million users worldwide interact with SAP Fiori every day, often without even realizing it. SAP Fiori isn't just a design language, it's the foundation of the modern SAP user experience, connecting design, technology, and business processes in one seamless interface. Welcome, everyone, to today's live expert session. We're thrilled to have you join us. I'm very pleased to have here with me Oliver Graf, Director, Product Management for SAP UI5. Oliver held various positions in development as well as in project and product management. He is passionate about engaging with customers and spreading knowledge on SAP technologies. Now, before handing over to Oliver, just a quick reminder, the second part of A Hitchhiker's Guide will take place this Thursday in 2 days, October 30th. And now, without further ado, over to you, Oliver.
Thanks, Tanya. So just sharing my screen. Yes, welcome. Thanks, Tanya. My name is Oliver Graf, and this session is called A Hitchhiker's Guide to SAP Fiori UX and its technologies. And maybe first thing, what I should do is explain why I chose this name. So in case you're not familiar, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a science fiction story created by Douglas Adams. And it was originally aired in BBC Radio 1978, and then later adapted into other formats. And the story follows basically Arthur Dent, who is rescued from Earth, and he's traveling the galaxy together with Ford Prefect. And Ford is the author of an electronic travel guide, which is called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So this is where I took the name from, because I thought this is a good picture, a good metaphor. If you have a guide which gives you very practical, helpful advice in situations where you have a challenge and you need some help. So this is what I intend with this session. It's an overview session on Fiori user experience and the related tools and technologies. And down there you see one slogan in this story is "Don't panic." So at the back of the Hitchhiker's Guide, it says "Don't panic," which I think is a useful advice if you're traveling the galaxy, or maybe if you're venturing into the SAP Fiori world. And also a towel is playing a big role in the story. So a towel has lots of practical value if you have a towel, but also has a psychological value and can help you if you're in difficult situations. So this is why I came up with a name. And maybe I can show this here. I have the initial edition of the book. It looks a bit old. It's already have yellow pages here. And at the back, it says, "Don't panic." So I think this is a good advice. Now let's have a look at what I have planned for this session. As Tanya mentioned, it's a two-part series. 1 hour is today, and a second hour is on Thursday. And the topics for today are SAP Fiori user experience. So why are we doing this? What's the role of user experience, and how can we achieve an improvement of the user experience, maybe compared to earlier years in SAP? And have a look at what we call the digital experience for business users. So how would business users see the Fiori user experience? How would they call up applications, for example? And then have a Q&A at the end of this hour. And then on Thursday, we have a similar session, same time, same place, about the technical aspects about building apps with development environments, for example, SAP Build, and also about extending standard apps. So if the standard offering, let's say in SAP S/4HANA, is not sufficient for your business, for your company, you might want to take standard apps and extend them with a little custom code to make it fit to what your business users expect. But don't worry, it's not a technical session. These are overview sessions. So even if you're not a developer, if you're not working in code, this session will be perfectly fine and you will be able to easily understand this. So that's the overall plan I have. But maybe as a first thing, I would like to understand who you are. So maybe in the YouTube chat, you can just let me know, are you a developer or do you have some other function? As I mentioned, there's no problem if you're not a developer, the session is perfectly fine for you. Just let me know in the YouTube chat, which function do you have? Are you a developer or do you have any other function? Just log on to YouTube and put your function into the YouTube chat. Okay, thanks, Jose. I see you're a BTP data analytics developer. Okay, so you are a developer. And maybe with data and analytics, this is a special area, some special requirements on user experience. And maybe you're new to Fiori and you want to learn about some of the tools and technologies. We see there's UX designers. That's perfect, right? I mean, this is a close connection. We're going to talk about Fiori design and then also how to implement this. Analytics architect. I see a developer, functional consultant. Very nice. I think this session would fit even if you're not a developer, as I mentioned. Very good. So just a second question. Let me know, how many Fiori apps have you developed? Again, there's no problem if you have put 0 Fiori apps. You'll still be fine in this session. We won't go into coding. Just let me know, how many Fiori apps have you developed? If it's 0, it's perfectly fine. You can still stay in this session. We have someone from accounting, an SAP administrator. Very good. I think after these 2 sessions, you'll have a good overview understanding of Fiori and what it means. Let me know, how many Fiori apps have you developed? 0, 20. Renato has developed 20. So Renato, I think, is already an expert. Jose activated Fiori apps from the Fiori library. So you're using standard SAP apps. So maybe this extensibility topic, which we'll discuss on Thursday, is interesting for you. So how can you take standard apps and extend them in case they're not fully fitting what you need? Okay, designed 50 apps. Very good. Developed 3 with Build apps. So we'll also mention Build apps, of course. Torsten developed more than 100 apps. Okay, Torsten, you're an expert. I see that. So you can help me answering questions. Excellent. Thank you very much. Now let's start. So let's start why we are doing this. Let's start with the Fiori user experience. At SAP, we have lots of transactions, applications, and the old classical SAP GUI transactions are typically very technical. SAP put all the functionality into one transaction. No matter which person, which business user is using this, no matter which role the person have, there's lots of technical functionality. The transaction is very complex and not easy to use. So this is something we did in the past, and we're doing better now with Fiori. So we're not looking at a feature list, technologies, but we're looking at a person, at a business user, and what the person, what's the task of the person? What functionality does the person need to have to offer a personalized experience? And this is very different, of course. And this means that the applications need to be very different to what we had in the past. So this is one approach to change towards Fiori from inside out, from SAP. But of course, also outside SAP, there's things happening. And I'm not going to explain internet and mobile and all these things which happened in the past. But there's different expectations towards SAP. And you can actually by now say that the people here on this slide, they use SAP software that can actually be, I'm not so sure the two guys at the top right, whether they use profit center accounting in SAP S/4HANA. I'm not quite sure about that. But you can actually imagine that those people use SAP software. So quite different to what we had in the past. And well, looking at this slide, it looks a bit like marketing style. I promise you, I'm not very good in delivering marketing messages. I'm not having many slides like this. So I'm trying to give very practical information. So this is a bit of an exception. So just as a warning. So if we want to change the user experience of SAP applications, we came up more than 10 years ago with SAP Fiori. And SAP Fiori is actually, if you are very strict, is the design system. As you might use the term SAP Fiori for tools and technologies to build Fiori. You might use SAP Fiori as a term to describe the applications. But if you're very strict, the SAP Fiori is the design system. So it describes how the user experience is being created. I can show you here there's a design system page which specifies the design basically for web, as you can see here. Maybe I can make the font a bit larger. For web, for Android and iOS native mobile devices, and also for other aspects like web pages or branding. And if you look into these pages here, you can see what SAP Fiori actually describes. For example, UI elements. And you see a long list of UI elements. We can take, I don't know, maybe just a very simple one is a button. I'm just scrolling here. So this is the button component. And the button, of course, should look the same in all SAP applications. We don't want to have different buttons which behave differently because we want to have a consistent experience across all SAP solutions. So how do we do this? The designers specify the design, the visual design, the behavior of the button. And those of you who are designers, they will probably come across either this page or from other design systems. So this specifies the anatomy of the button, the different types of buttons, and you can see there's buttons with a badge and buttons with a badge here next to it, or just different colors here, an emphasize button, and you have buttons for accept and for reject, and they have a different color. And all of these things, and not just for buttons, but also for complex UI elements like a table or a hierarchy, which are, of course, also part of SAP software. So this is a specification on how the experience is. And I can also show you, as I've seen some of you are designers, we also have, maybe I can show you where this is linked here at the start page. Here we have, if we look at Fiori for web, we also have Figma kits. So if you're as a designer, if you work in Figma to design an application, you have here Figma kits where you can use basically patterns or stencils of these elements I mentioned for your design. Yeah, so this is the SAP Fiori design. I mean, I'm just, my browser behaves a bit strange. Okay, here we go. And then we use that design for SAP applications, of course. And we want them to look good, to look modern, to use, for example, the Horizon theme with the colors and the visual design you can see here. And we want all applications to look consistent. You see the cards here at the top, the to-do list or the tasks here, and they all look the same. And if they all look the same, then the business users can recognize these cards. They don't need a new documentation and a new training for each and every new application, because all the applications behave the same and they look the same and they work the same. It's little things like the approve and reject button are always in the same place and have the same color and do the same thing. But there's also more complex tasks like how you navigate through an application and so on. So we want that to be consistent. And now this is already a spoiler alert, how to do this in a consistent way. You use the same technology, right? Because if you use the same technology, it's the same. It looks the same, it behaves the same. And we started with Fiori some years ago. As you can see here, we started with simple scenarios and went towards more complex ones. At the beginning, it was very simple scenarios where you just have approve or reject. And then we covered more applications in SAP S/4HANA, for example. We covered native mobile apps, and we'll mention that on Thursday a bit more. We implemented new themes to update the visual design to what's happening in the design space. And this is going on. This is an evolution. It's not over. It's an evolution, and this is continuing. Of course, we want to keep the design, the experience modern, while we're making sure that, for example, we put in intelligence, for example, AI with Joule, and we're going to mention that. And we have consistent applications. And this is what I'll probably mention a couple of times. We want to have consistency. We don't want to implement every application in a different way, so they look different, they behave different. We want to have consistency by using the appropriate tools and technologies. And this is a bit of an old screenshot. You see starting pages on the left of different SAP solutions, SAP Marketing Cloud and Ariba and S/4HANA and so on. And they look very different and they behave very different. And the user would need a new training to use them. And this is not something we want. We want to move the experience towards a single consistent experience across the different SAP solutions so that they behave the same. So that's the idea of SAP Fiori. And that includes, as I mentioned, different or basically all SAP solutions, not just S/4HANA, but also in this example, Concur, right? Concur also uses the same theme, the same horizon colors, for example. And as on the right, as you can see here, we're not just talking about buttons and tables and so on, but also about Gen AI and conversational interface. This is Joule on the right, helping you to book flights. And you're doing this in a conversational way. It says, I want to book a flight from San Francisco to London and so on. And then you can actually book your flight. And that requires a very different experience and very different design. And that's all part of the Fiori design and the UI technologies we are using. And this is the time where I should introduce another character of the Hitchhiker's Guide. This is Marvin. Marvin is the paranoid android. And it says that Marvin has the brain the size of a planet. So Marvin is very clever, very intelligent. But the funny thing is in the story, they only give Marvin tasks like, can you make a cup of tea or open the door? So Marvin is very frustrated because he's super intelligent, but only gets very easy tasks like opening a door or things like that. But here in my presentation, Marvin provides you with links where you can learn more on the different topics and have entry points, practical entry points or tutorials to learn more about the topics you see here on the slides or I mentioned. The first two I already showed you, the SAP design system, the Fiori with the guidelines. How do buttons look like? How does table look like? And which colors? And how is the navigation between the different screens, for example. The second one is the Web UI kit for Figma for the designers to build their design in Figma. And I also wanted to highlight the blog post here. Maybe I can quickly show that. What I'm talking about in today's session and on Thursday is mainly the UI technologies, the development tools, the generic technologies. If you're also interested in what applications do with this technology in the different solutions in SAP, then I would recommend blog post from my colleague Thomas Reis, as you can see here. And this one is, for example, I think it's a 7-part series about the latest on UX in different solutions here. You see S/4HANA, SuccessFactors, Ariba, and so on. And these are super long blog posts and a nice summary where you can see how applications use the technologies I explained here. So this is something I can recommend. Maybe you want to follow Thomas Reis to get future blog posts. So that's something I can recommend. Good. So let's have a look at the overview of tools and technologies. I put here teaching concept. This is not an official SAP slide or messaging. This is basically a summary I did learning from questions customers or partners have or beginners in the area have. So just as a disclaimer, this is not complete. This is maybe even not absolutely correct, but I think it can help you navigating the tools and technologies. So what would you do in Fiori context? You would run applications. So business users want to run applications, of course. You might also want to extend or adapt applications, standard applications from SAP. You want to tweak a bit to make them fit. Or if this doesn't help, you may want to develop your own applications, custom applications. So who is doing this? Developer is developing, obviously. Maybe a key user, and I'm explaining that on Thursday, can also do some changes. This is drag and drop tools to change standard SAP applications. And the business users would run applications, obviously. And then we can talk about also on Thursday about pro code and low code or no code, different styles of how you develop application. This is an interesting question, and let's talk about that on Thursday. And of course, the business users use different UI technologies. For example, desktop and web with SAP UI5 or even SAP GUI, and mobile with native mobile technologies. And then we have a backend. I'm not having a focus on this, but I assume many of you would also know a lot about your respective backend, whether it's an ECC system, S/4HANA system, S/4HANA Cloud, or various other systems here. So what is in between here? We have the business user typically wants to have an entry point, right? The business user wants to start applications. So you want to have an entry page to launch applications, for example, or to collaborate with other colleagues. And this is where we have on the Business Technology Platform an entry point with different editions, I should say. SAP Start, SAP works on Standard Edition and Advanced Edition. So these are to implement entry points to call Fiori functionalities. So if you have heard of the Fiori Launchpad, this is where it belongs in this box. Then development environments. Also on Business Technology Platform, we have SAP Build, which didn't fit here in this picture. SAP Build features SAP Build Code or SAP Build Apps. I remember one of you used Build Apps. And of course, for native mobile development, we have also environments. So this is what developers would use. But developers may not only use cloud-based tools on Business Technology Platform, but also similar functionalities on a local laptop, in a local IDE, for example, in Visual Studio Code, if you're, let's say, developing non-ABAP, which is, for example, Fiori UI, or if you're developing ABAP, then there's the ABAP development tools in Eclipse. What else do we have? For extensibility adaptation, we have SAP UI5 flexibility, and we're talking about that. And for classical SAP GUI, WebDyn Pro ABAP screens, we have SAP screen personas. So tools to take a standard SAP application and change it, maybe make it simpler or add a custom field to make it fit to what your business requirement is. And last but not least, the SAP Mobile Start to launch applications on a native mobile device. And there's still a gap here on this picture. There's AI. Of course, nowadays we have AI supporting all these tasks, the different types of users. You have heard of Joule, the AI co-pilot to help business users, help developers or key users to do these tasks. So this is our overview, our guide, and the colored boxes in the middle are the chapters I want to explain and highlight. So this is the guidance through these two sessions here. So let's start with the first one, the entry point. The entry point to Fiori, the SAP Build work zone. So the situation probably also in your company is that it's not just one system. You have many systems, many repositories with different data, and they need to work together. And you have SAP systems, maybe you have non-SAP systems. You have different content, maybe even different UI technologies you need to bring together. You have cloud, you have on-premise systems, different channels, internal, external. But the business user don't want to see those as separate. They want to have this integrated experience to work with these applications. So the business user, this is the vision, so to speak, for the SAP work zone, wants to be productive and have access to applications, for example, Fiori applications, to processes, to tasks, as we've seen on one of the earlier screenshots, and information. So to have a intelligent, efficient access to those applications. And we have the different solutions you can see here on the right, S/4HANA, SuccessFactors, other solutions. And once you're using this solution, you can call up the applications. Individual applications you see at the bottom, and sometimes there's an overview page in between. So from your, let's say, S/4HANA cloud system, you can navigate to an overview page, which for one, let's say, business area gives you an overview, some analytic information, and so on. And from there, you can then launch one application or another application, and you could navigate between the applications. So this is if you have separate products which each have their own homepage, right? S/4HANA Cloud has a homepage, SuccessFactors has a homepage, and so on. But to bring these together, if you want to have a convenient single entry point for cross-system for all these systems, then the solutions SAP offers is SAP Start and SAP Work Zone. And as mentioned, they are built on BTP, and they can run in the browser or in a native mobile environment. So the intention is to bring one user experience across the enterprise, the SAP solutions, building a digital workspaces, different business sites, different pages to group the information, to have entry points for the different roles. All of this is, of course, role-based, to have entry points into overview pages, for example, or applications. So that's the goal of WorkZone, or the offering. And maybe just to put them into context, we have SAP Start. It's a pre-configured homepage, right? The other tool, which I will show you, is where you do customizing to do your your setup here. The SAP Start is a pre-configured homepage for cloud solutions to launch, for example, applications. Then the next step in, depending on what you need, is SAP Build Workzone Standard Edition, providing access to multiple cloud and on-premise system. So again, if you in the past have heard of the SAP Fiori Launchpad experience, where you have, for example, spaces and pages and different role-based access to application. This is what is offered here with options to integrate applications, for example, to integrate custom applications. And then the advanced edition of SAP Workzone that includes, for example, collaboration features. It includes, for example, unstructured data, whereas the standard edition calls applications, to simplify it a bit. The advanced edition would also be able to work with Office, web content, different workspaces to collaborate in a team, so more functionality. And Mobile Start is available across these offerings to access that on a native mobile screen. And again, just a comparison here so that you understand the difference. SAP Start is for cloud solutions. Standard edition also includes on-premise solutions and custom apps. And advanced edition then also handles unstructured data and collaboration. And there's, I mentioned Joule, the AI Copilot, and that is also available in Build Workzone. It's available in the SAP Start and in Build Workzone Standard Edition at the moment, and it offers a conversational interface to work there. So not just to work with Workzone itself, but also to get information from the integrated systems, from the integrated applications. So that's a whole new experience on how to work with Workzone Standard Edition. And again, Marvin here is to show some tutorials. Maybe I can quickly show you what I have here. So that is a tutorial which I can recommend if you want to try out Workzone Standard Edition. For example, to understand how you would implement a Launchpad experience, then I would recommend this tutorial. You can do this on the BTP trial environment. So no installation, no cost. You can try out. And this explains how to create the trial account on BTP, how to do your setup, and then have different steps here on how to set it up and how to put applications into the Launchpad. And there's more links here in case you want to go a bit deeper. And of course, we're going to share the slides afterwards on the YouTube page, so you can follow the links here. Okay, next topic in this area is the UI technology, and the UI technology is SAP UI5. SAP UI5 is SAP's standard UI framework, strategic UI framework. SAP UI5 offers a consistent experience. I mentioned at the beginning, this is what we want to achieve. And by using SAP UI5, we have the UI5 capabilities in all the different solutions. You can use this in the web. So you have a single implementation which runs in all the different browsers and platforms because it's web-based. We have many enterprise UI elements. Remember, we were looking at the button, for example, but there's many other UI elements to implement business applications. Powerful extensibility options. Of course, for many partners and customers, extensibility of standard apps is crucial. There's no way without this. So having options in the UI technology to add your custom changes, your custom code maybe, in a clever way without breaking the standard, without modifying the standard. This is a very important functionality. And I can tell you, if I'm doing presentations at conferences, for example, and I'm presenting UI5, for example, with all the features, most of the questions are on extensibility. So this is a super important topic for many customers and partners. Innovations, we bring innovations in UI5. Well, that's no surprise. But by having it in a central UI technology, they immediately affect all the applications using UI5. It's a bit obvious. For example, the Horizon theme, when this came out, we implemented this in UI5 and it was available for all applications. Not every application had to change to Horizon. Maybe it's obvious for you. For example, if you're a developer, it sounds easy, but in reality, it's maybe not always the case. And we have tools to develop the applications, and we are going to look at those on Thursday. I mentioned UI5 applications run in the web. So UI5, the UI5 framework takes care of different browsers, different platforms, different devices. And if you are a developer, you might know that handling different browsers, running in different browsers with JavaScript is not that easy. So all of these is taken care by UI5. The developers can focus on their business logic, and the rest is being taken care of the UI5 framework. They have a link here on the browser and platform support with the operating systems and so on in case you're interested. So does it really run everywhere? I mean, if you're working in S/4HANA, you have SAP UI5 and you're good. If you are working in BTP, Business Technology Platform, you also have SAP UI5 and you're good. But maybe there's other solutions in SAP or non-SAP solutions which are built with different UI technologies. For example, Angular or React. What happens with those? We want a consistent user experience, but you have a completely different UI technology. So how can we do this? The business user would experience a break in the experience, in the design. And this is where web components come in handy. Maybe I can quickly explain a web component. So this is some HTML. It's plain HTML. There's no SAP, no S/4HANA, no ABAP, no nothing. It's just HTML. And the result is a plain HTML page. This has not the SAP qualities we are looking for. For example, accessibility, that you can use this with keyboard, for example. It does not have, for example, the security required by SAP applications, that you cannot paste malicious JavaScript code into the input field here. And all the things you would require, for example, the Horizon theme is also not implemented. So when we use web components, which is basically an own browser standard to define your own HTML tags, a web component is basically a custom HTML tag. And we define the HTML tag with the UI5 capabilities I mentioned earlier. And the result looks similar, but it's not the same because this is following the Fiori design, the visual design, the colors, the fonts, the accessibility, security. All of this is now part of the application. But still, there's no backend, no nothing. This is a web application. And web can run with different UI technologies, Angular, React, or others. So that's the idea. We use web components to bring Fiori qualities, UI5 qualities, to different UI stacks. And if we look at the whole of SAP, I'm not going to explain this picture, but if we're looking at the whole SAP offerings, they are based on the design system, on enterprise qualities such as accessibility or security. This is based on UI5, for example, and we're going to mention Fiori elements in a second, or other UI technologies as a programming model. And they use UI elements. We talked about UI5 controls earlier. But then the web components would run in web, in HTML, also having Fiori qualities. They can also run in Angular React, as mentioned. And what is new is that they can also be used in the SAP UI5 framework. So that's fairly new. This means we at SAP, new UI elements we develop as web components, and you can use them across all technologies. A new web component can be used in Angular React. That's not new, but you can also use them in UI5. You stay with UI5. There's no change to any existing, let's say, S/4HANA applications. You stay with the UI5 programming model. You stay with UI5 controls. But future new controls, most of them we are going to develop as web components because we can use them everywhere. So again, this is consistency. Same web component, same visual design, same qualities used across the board. That's consistency. And if you're a UI5 developer, if you develop a freestyle UI5 application, you have a number of controls in your view, and it's very easy to add a web component encapsulated as UI5 controls, so there's hardly any difference you will notice. And you can use them in the UI5 programming model. Again, this is no change to the existing UI5 or applications built with it. This is about how we offer future UI elements in a technology that can be used in UI5 and other technologies. So to summarize, SAP UI5 is SAP's strategic framework with web components and UI5. I mentioned the web components here. We have a big number of controls for developing business applications. So SAP UI5 was, is, and will be the standard strategic UI technology of SAP. So it's the reference implementation and provides UX consistency. This is basically what I explained earlier. So now a couple of links here to the UI5 demo kit where you can see the documentation. Maybe I can quickly show you the demo kit here. This is ui5.sap.com, and you can see, for example, tutorials here. In case, let me make this a bit bigger. You can easy step 1, 2, 3, a quick start tutorial, and then longer tutorials here to learn the different concepts of SAP UI5. And provided also a link to tutorials and to the SAP UI5 community where developers can change their questions and answers, for example. So let's have a look at Fiori elements. So often I see that it says somewhere, use UI5 or Fiori elements. This is this is creating a lot of misunderstanding. This chapter is about developing UI5 applications. Full stop. You can do it with freestyle coding, or you can do it in a clever way, in an efficient way. And this is Fiori elements, but it's still about developing SAP UI5 apps. So what happened in the past? We started with Fiori development. We developed maybe first 10 Fiori applications. And then we needed more, and there were hundreds of Fiori applications or even thousands of Fiori applications. And then you start thinking, well, if I have my code and then a second app and a third app, then maybe there are some similarities. Maybe there's same code, and I start copying code from one application to the next one. And then I think, this is a lot of code I own because I developed, one of you, I think, developed 100 applications, right? Imagine, was it Thorsten? Did I remember? Yeah, Thorsten. Thorsten, if you develop 100 application and you copied a lot of coding. You own this coding, Thorsten, right? You own it. You need to maintain it. You need to debug it. You need to change it if there's any new, let's say, I don't know, new concept, and you need to implement this. You need to implement this 100 times. This is a lot of responsibility, a lot of maintenance effort for you. So the obvious thing is you want to identify reuse parts and take them out in a reuse place, right? Very obvious, very easy to understand. This is how, if you're in marketing, how you put this. To boost developer productivity, right? Less manual coding. Yes. Drive consistency. How would you drive consistency? By using the same, reusing certain code, always the same. And if it's the same, it's consistent because it's the same. And enable enterprise readiness. If you have enterprise qualities like accessibility and security, for example, if you have implemented that in the framework, it can be used everywhere. So it enables that everywhere. So this is basically, all of this is saying, take reusable pieces out of the application and offer them in a central framework. Very obvious, very easy. That's the idea of Fiori elements. For example, if you look at applications, this is a list of, I don't know, a list of deliveries here, and then a screen with details. And the list has sorting, filtering, an export to Excel personalization, search field. The details have a header and sections and so on. It's always the same. And the navigation back and forth is always the same. And how you provide lifecycle stability and responsiveness is always the same. So these features we want to implement in a central place and not copy them from one application to another. So what we do is, at the end, we need an SAP UI5 view here. That's what we need at the end. But how do we create this? Not via freestyle code, but we create this from a framework here. That's the Fiori elements patterns on the top left. For example, a list report page and an object page. Those are the two I showed you earlier. If your application follows, let me show you again, follows this pattern here, then you would use a Fiori elements list report object page pattern. And these are provided by SAP with all the functionality I mentioned. But of course, there's something still left you need to do as an application developer. You need to give some hints and define what is being displayed. This explains how it's being displayed, for example, as list report object page. But if you develop a specific list of, let's say, deliveries, you would need to define what's my first column, what's my second column. Is it ready for input or display only? Can I create new deliveries? Can I delete deliveries? And all these things you would need to specify. Which fields do you see in the header and so on? So this is what you define as an application developer. And the way you do this is annotations. And maybe I can quickly show you in, or maybe a bit later, I'll show you in a minute, show you an example. And this is then being, you see here, I'm a visual designer here. I can use PowerPoint. You see, at runtime, these are combined and the UI5 view is being created. So the UI5 view is not manually developed, but created at runtime from the business data, obviously, from the framework patterns and your annotations you provide as an application developer. That's the idea. And if you compare those two approaches, on the left, you have these pattern in Fiori elements. On the right, you see the freestyle UI5 approach. The difference is that, of course, with these patterns, it's very efficient because you can reuse code. Whereas with the freestyle approach, it's very flexible because it's your own code. And if your business users require a special, not just a normal list, but some special functionality, you can implement this. It's not the standard recommendation Fiori Design SAP recommends, but you can implement it, of course. And you can see standard floor plans are used here, whereas with your own freestyle UI5 code, you can implement any code. And so in total, we would assume that the total cost of development is lower with Fiori Elements compared to freestyle. And also in SAP, we use Fiori Elements. And I don't know the exact number, something like 80% of all new Fiori applications built in SAP are built with the Fiori Elements approach. And just one more thing, because it's not an either or, and I want to explain this here. So this is again the two options. You have Fiori Elements on the left with these floor plans, like list report object page. And on the right, we have the freestyle UI5 with UI5 controls. It's very flexible. But there's some gap in the middle, so there's something missing. And this is the flexible programming model. So it's basically a mixture. You can use as much floor plans, you can reuse as much logic as possible, because that's very efficient, right? As a developer, you want to reuse code. But use also freestyle UI5 coding where needed. So if there is a requirement, then you can use that as well. So the flexible programming model is actually saying you can mix both approaches, use or reuse as much as possible with the Fiori Elements approach, and add as much freestyle as needed depending on your requirements. And that's, I think, a very strong concept. If you are only on the left or right, then you have restrictions, right? If you are fully in the floor plans, you're not flexible. You have the floor plan, you get this functionality, it's recommended by SAP, but you cannot change it, and that's it. Not very flexible. If you're on the right, you're very flexible, but not efficient, because you need a lot of coding, you need a lot of UI5 JavaScript knowledge to implement this. But if you can mix both, reuse as much as possible, but have the still maintaining the freedom, this is, I think, a good approach. So this is a very future-proof approach, I think. So let's have a quick look how that would look like. We have the very new Fiori development portal, and I put this link also in the slide, which explains exactly this. It explains the floor plans, for example, the list report and object page floor plans. It describes the building blocks. So these are elements which you can reuse, elements which use the Fiori Elements approach, driven by annotations, but you can embed them in freestyle code. So this is the mix and match I mentioned earlier. Maybe I can just quickly show you a very simple example. So let's have a look at an object page here. So you see an object page here. It's a business trip with some header data, begin date, end date, price, and some sections here with travel information, approval data. So this is what you get. It's an SAP UI5 view. Now let's have a look at let me just see here it is. I'm just having a look at the code. So don't be afraid, we're not going into details. On the right, you see the code. On the left, you see the result, which is the page. In the header, you have begin date, end date, total price. And here, somewhere here, you have also, here it is, begin date, end date, total price. So what I'm going to do is now I remove the price. Let's say we don't need the price here. I remove it, and you see on the left, the price is gone. This is not a surprise, right? If you change the code, then you change the UI. But the interesting thing is this is not UI coding. This is the CDS, Core Data Services file in the backend. These are the annotations. So by changing the annotations, for example, in the backend, we're affecting the UI. I did not touch any JavaScript, HTML, UI5 coding. This is all coming from the framework, controlled by UI annotations. That's the whole idea of this Fiori Elements approach.
Oliver?
Yeah.
A very quick question before you go on. From the chat, the building blocks, where can I find it? It is not in the wizards.
I have here the link to the Fiori development portal, right? This is the portal I just showed you here. And there you can see basically the whole mixture. You can see the full page floor plans, like list report object page, and you can see the building blocks here. And for example, what you could do, one example is you could take what they call here a custom page. So this is a freestyle UI5 page and put building blocks on top. Let's say your application is a freestyle UI5 application, but you want to have a filter bar in a table. And you don't want to implement all of the filter bar table functionality like Excel export, filtering, paging, and everything. You want to reuse that. So you create a custom page, you put building blocks, where is it? Filter bar, and where's the table here? Why is this not sorted? Put a table on it. They are controlled by annotations, but all around you can use your freestyle UI5 to build whatever your requirement is. So lots of documentation, samples, and so on are part of the Fiori development portal, which I linked, which Marvin points out here on this slide. And Tanya, we're almost at the end. I have one last slide to compare the different approaches here. Remember, I mentioned the web components. A web component is a single UI element. It comes with the Fiori design, with some behavior, visual design, accessibility, security, and so on. But it's a single UI element, like a table, a checkbox, an input field. We talked about SAP UI5, which is a framework. It has UI5 controls and web components now, by the way, as I explained. But it is a framework for application development. It has features for navigating, for data binding, and much more. So when you develop an application, this is what you need, some kind of application framework. And if we talk about Fiori Elements, it's based on UI5. It uses UI5, but on top, it offers an efficient way if you want to reuse a lot of stuff, use annotations to control your UI and less coding on your own. This is the approach of Fiori Elements. And that's it. That's the links here from Marvin, and that is the end of today's session. Remember, there's a second part on Thursday, and I want to hand it to Tanya to see if we have questions.
Thank you so much for your great presentation, Oliver. It seems it was so clear and complete that you left no open questions.
Okay, maybe there's one question you have right now. Just put it in the chat, in the YouTube chat.
And should any questions pop up after the session is over, feel free to add it in the comments area underneath this video. We will look at them and have them answered. So, it seemed, as I said, it was clear and comprehensive, as usual, actually, Oliver. Thank you so much. And another opportunity would be coming Thursday. So if you have any questions from today's session, just join us again on Thursday and ask them there.
Yeah, we will talk about development tools, for example, SAP Build, and also talk about extensibility, UI5 flexibility, how to extend standard applications. That's on Thursday.
Well, then I would say thank you so much again, Oliver, for your excellent presentation. And thank you very much for everyone for joining. I hope you got a lot of value from this session. And I hope to see you again on Thursday. Have a great day. Have a great evening, depending on where you are. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.